Hey there, welcome to our max spoilers on Elden Ring. I am Kyle Hilliard, and with us today, friend of the show, YouTube essayist Jacob Geller. Did I say that right? YouTube essayist? Is that
yeah?
Is that
that's how I introduce myself now.
Oh, perfect. Okay, and we're also chatting with Harper J. McIntyre from Double Fine.
Hello.
And
I had a different name last time I was here.
That's right. Yeah, you were on.
Bringing it up, change it.
It was Hades, right?
Yeah, I was here for Hades. That was what, like at least a year ago, probably more. What is time anymore?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, and plus we are all been playing Elden Ring, so like that makes time distort even more.
Yes.
Awesome.
I've moved on to, no offense to Elden Ring, but I've moved on to Stranger of Paradise, which I hope to finish today live on my own Twitch channel.
Good luck.
I started that game and it had a different dodge button than Elden Ring, and I was just like, I can't do it. Like I can't adjust the dodge being
maps to X instead of circle.
Yeah,
circle is your parry button. But
I'm
we're here to talk about Elden Ring.
Same deal.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. Okay. So before we move too much further into the discussion, I do want to remind everyone here that we're a Patreon, of course. And one of the bonuses we offer at the $5 tier is that you can listen to the podcast version of conversations like this. So, no need to watch us on YouTube. If you prefer to just listen to us on your favorite podcast app, you can do that by supporting us at the $5 tier. So just want to get that out of the way. And let's dive into this thing. Let's set the table with like how much everyone's played, maybe a quick From history. Let's start with you, Harper J. Like, how much did you play? What is your history with From?
My history with From is pretty extensive, both from a mixture of just my personal life and then eventually my professional life, right? So I played the original Dark Souls that came out around the time, maybe a little bit before college or when I was heading into college. Dark Souls 2 came out in college. I played that. I love it. That is the best Dark Souls game. I'm sorry. If anybody disagrees with me, they're wrong. And
here, I wish you nothing but pain. Real quick. I actually will. I'll back you on that because that was actually my starting line. Right, that was the one that showed me the rope. So I have a lot of affection for Dark Souls.
They're all brilliant games. So I'm kind of like just ribbing people, right? Because Dark Souls 2 is the one that people dislike quite a bit. But the first one is foundational. The second one is really experimental. The third one plays the best, but is kind of in love with its own lore a little too much. It's like, do you remember this thing? Do you remember this thing? And I'm like, yes, I do remember this thing. But I'm a big fan of the series. Bloodborne, obviously. My favorite thing in the world out of anything FromSoft is actually Sekiro. I like the pace of that game. It's a very different sort of game. I like the aesthetics and lore of that game too when it comes to how they think about immortality and things like that. For Elden Ring, I had a period, like maybe a couple weeks, like the week heading up into Elden Ring where I was kind of sick and it was like, oh man, I might not be able to play. So there were a couple days when Elden Ring released and everybody was playing and I was like, man, I still feel like crud, I can't play. But now I've played, now I've finished. I can't dare to venture the amount of hours, but I have missed stuff, right? So there's like, I haven't even gone to kill Rickard, the whatever snake guy or whatever. So I want to go back and get rid of a bunch of, go through and do like the rest of my bosses. Because I streamed it on Twitch, but I kind of did it at an accelerated pace. And then before, the other thing I'll say is like a lot of From coverage from back when I was a journalist, right? I had to cover Dark Souls Remastered, which was its like own weird video game version of rekindling the fire and stuff, right? So I love it all. It's very fun.
Awesome. Jacob, what about you? How much time did you spend on Elden Ring? And
so my first playthrough was 75 80 hours. I haven't completed a second. Currently I've played 110 hours of this game. I'm kind of like 25 hours into a second run. I was just looking at my most played games on Steam, and like of the top 10, every From game that could be in there is in there, or like, since Dark Souls, it's like the only one missing is Bloodborne because it's not on PC, but it's like Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Sekiro, Elden Ring, all in that top 10.
I was about to say, because the thing for me is, like, for me, Dark Souls and all that stuff, I always associate it with consoles, right? And it's so funny to see, well, funny is the wrong word. It's very good and gratifying to see the ways in which it's really expanded throughout the years to become even more of a PC thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. There's the extra catch of, like, this is maybe boring stuff, but both Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2 have 2 different versions on PC, and I own both of them. So the hours are split between, like, of those, and, like, both Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2 and now Elden Ring had pretty rough original actually, Dark Souls 2 I think was well optimized.
I like the original Dark Souls 2, but Scholar of the First Sin has a lot of stuff in it too. Like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and just technically, it's like the original Dark Souls was like infamously bad on PC to where there was a mod that was basically required to get it to play. And Elden Ring, for as much as I love it, like not the greatest PC release in the world, but that clearly has not stopped me from dumping just ungodly amounts of it time into these games.
Porting stuff is hard. I'm around game developers all the time now. Porting stuff is hard.
But they make it on a PC. It should be easy, right? This is a very simple thing.
That's how it works.
You would think so.
And then in terms of the run through, I think I did in my first playthrough. I got all the great runes, and I think I did like pretty much all the big bosses, but I say that and then continue to hear about, like, I had friends talking about like the 2 gargoyles the other day, and I was like, I did not run into 2 gargoyles, so there's clearly stuff that I missed out on.
Yeah, there's like 4 dragons hiding somewhere, and someone's like, did you fight this one? It has 2 heads, and I'm like, I haven't fought a 2-headed dragon at all. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know you're talking about let's see if I can pronounce it. Placiduous or something?
Placiduous,
which also sounds like Parthenax, the one from Skyrim.
Right. I just call it Placid USAX is kind of like
that's actually
getting
Placid
to that boss
is
is very strange.
It's a good name because when I was fighting that boss, it just stopped moving halfway through, and then
very placid.
I got very placid, and I took out my little chainsaw sword and just cut through it, and it very calmly allowed me to do that. So sometimes you get lucky.
That happened to me. So I'm like a weird middling From fan. Haven't beat Dark Souls 1, beat 2 and 3, never beat Bloodborne. Really like Sekiro though. Sekiro and Elden Ring are the 2 for me, and I've been going back and forth for a while. I still definitely Sekiro has the combat I prefer, and I like having just the one sort of character that everyone can kind of figure out how to make perfect in their own way. But I mean, yeah, Elden Ring is. Man, the exploration is kind of unbeatable. It kind of comes down to combat versus exploration.
You might get a lot out of Bloodborne, not to interrupt, but it's like there's less build.
Yeah,
like, there's less build messing around in that. And it's a little faster. So if you like Sekiro, that might be your next move. You just have to wait for the great remaster that's clearly around the corner, coming tomorrow every day.
Hold that football right there.
I've given it 2 like proper attempts, right? Like when it came out, I sat down and really tried it and kind of bounced off of it. And then like, I don't know, a year or 2 ago, I tried again and got like 20 hours in, and I don't know, just doesn't, I don't know. Maybe it's the world. Maybe I just not into that type of horror. I don't know. It's maybe someday I'll give it another shot, but yeah, Elden Ring, I think I might have you guys beat at my timer on PS5 says 132 hours, and I ended the game at level 142.
Nice.
And there's the big final most difficult. Jacob, you complained about her a lot.
Not our former first lady, but Malenia.
Yeah. Right. I basically got to her front door, and I was so scared off by everyone complaining about her that I was like, I'm just gonna go do other stuff. And so I have not fought, but I just about every other boss that gives you like a trophy or whatever, I've encountered and defeated. So, I'm not sure the best way to approach this, because I actually even messaged Jake about this a little bit. Like, I don't really know what's happening in this game. I read a couple of folks who had like plot summaries and stuff like that.
Yes.
But I still don't feel like I have a really great grasp on it. Maybe you guys do. Maybe that's the best way to approach this conversation. But I'm also happy to just kind of bounce between boss discussions, because I feel like those are the sort of like, you can put pins at those specific points in the game and talk about your experiences with them. I'm curious what you guys think and how you'd want to approach this.
May I attempt to give a very bad initial summary?
Please. I insist.
All right. So there's this place called the Land Between, and it's technically overseen by this greater power, but that greater power defers further power to a bunch of gods, and those gods get that power from an artifact called the Elden Ring. In order to be an Elden Lord who possesses the Elden Ring, you need to have a couple things. You need to be a being called an Empyrean, which I will not bother going into the lore behind because I barely understand it. You need to have a consort, and there's one other thing that you need. Anyway, there's this lady whose name is Marika. And she has the ring, and she uses its power. There's a big old tree called an Erd tree as well, and she has a lord whose name is Godfrey.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? Because Kyle and I had this realization together. The Elden Ring is like, it's not like it's not like one ring to rule them all, right? Like it's kind of a conceptual, like,
it's like a metaphysical
power structure.
Yeah, it's not like that thing. Anyway, so they rule for a while. There's a bunch of gods, and then one night, there's a witch whose name is Ronnie. She takes a piece of the death rune and uses it to construct a bunch of knives and gives them to these assassins. And there's a night called the Night of the Black Knives, where a bunch of gods are killed and a bunch of bad stuff happens and everything falls into disarray. And in her rage, Marika shatters the Elden Ring, which spreads pieces of it around the world. That's kind of how the world got to be where it is now. You play as something called a Tarnished, which is technically somebody spurned by the Erd tree. I keep on wanting to call it the Eld tree. But because the world needs an Elden Lord, it is letting Tarnished go and seek to become the Elden Lord. And much comedy ensues. That was a very bad version of that. There's like a bajillion other things. There's a dude named Radagon. There's a whole big battle between that lady we were talking about, Millennia, and Radon, where she just poisons him with scarlet rot. There's a bunch of stuff that goes on.
They fight, but then they end up at a sort of a standstill.
Yeah, she's the reason that Caelid is like all gnarly. Right. And she's the reason why later on in the game there's a big weird underground lake of rot and stuff too.
Oh yeah.
One thing that really struck me as kind of like, I mean, it's like, I don't even consider it. This is one of those things where it's like, well, that's just these games, where it's like, I finished it. I didn't like, I just assume I'll go and read about it afterwards. And like, that's how I'll kind of learn about the characters and whatever. And when I did, I actually kind of saw Kyle, when we talked about it on the podcast a few weeks ago, we were both kind of like, George R.R. Martin, who knows? Like, this feels kind of exactly like another Souls game. It's really hard to pin down like what he could have contributed. Yeah. But when you read about it, there actually is a lot more kind of like interpersonal dynamics between like bosses, particularly in this story, than there have been in previous From games, because I feel like the story is usually a bunch of individuals against kind of like entropy, essentially. You know, it's like they all tried to fight the abyss or the void or whatever, and like they had different experiences with it. And this one differently actually has like, it has a lot of like, this character backstabbed that character in a way that feels fairly unique for their storytelling style.
There's like a much more complicated family tree of like who's married to who and what god is related to what god and whose brother is what, compared to, you know, we have that in Dark Souls a bit with like Gwendolyn, Guinevere and stuff like that, but it's very simple, right? But here it's like, oh, you should also know that Marika at one point marries this one guy who adopts Ronnie, and also later on this other thing happens. There's this guy named Mog. He runs away with Mikola and does all like it's like all sorts of like kind of like you're saying, right? There's a lot of scheming. There's a lot of dynasties and families and people who are doing much more individualized and less vague cosmic sorts of violence to each other. It's like sometimes a dude just backstabs a person in the middle of the night, and you're like, oh, that's why this god hates the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, more Greek.
Though there is also the concept of like what does stealing the death rune mean functionally? Like, does that mean that like people stop dying, or does that mean that like Ronnie controls death, or like what happens?
It's complicated. When America becomes ruler of the lands between, I believe it's when America does this, America stops death in the land. There's a rune of death. I don't understand how it works entirely. There is an ending where you allow death to become a thing again. It's if you follow Fia's pathway. Each ending of the game has various different ways in which that you can alter the Elden Ring, or just choose to not. And one of them is that you affix a piece of the death rune to the Elden Ring and bring death back to people, right? Because otherwise it's just this big land of like god stasis and such.
Yeah, I don't know what one it is, but the Age of the Stars, I guess, that's the ending.
That's Ronnie's ending, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because I was pretty disappointed when I finished, because I think I wasn't looking up plot lines or like, you know, kind of how to progress characters. I think I was like one step away from fulfilling Ronnie's, but then I got like the miniature Ronnie, and then I never figured out what to do with it. Yeah, or I talked to her, but it was just like ... Like it didn't kind of give me anything. So maybe I had already kind of messed up that plot line the other way. Well, and so when I eventually
did you look up what you needed to do, Jacob?
No.
You just keep doing it. You just have to do it like 4 or 5 times.
Well,
like obviously, I don't know why you couldn't figure that out.
Come on, buddy.
Yeah, and so instead I got, and this is very similar to previous Souls games, I got essentially the status quo ending, where it was like, I beat the final boss, and then it was like, I sat on that throne in Morgoth's arena, and like there could not have been a more hollow victory.
It's not well signposted though, because when I was first playing, like when you do Ronnie's ending, a summon sign shows up, and you have to interact with that summon sign in order to do Ronnie's ending. But there's also
missable.
There's also a big thing in the middle of the room, which is just America's body, and the first thing you want to do is interact with that, and if you do that, you will get this, basically, like you're saying, the status quo ending. But if you're looking around for other summon signs from characters or whatever, that will be the thing that will dictate the other endings you get. And they're very easy to miss because that arena has messages and other crap in it from players.
Yeah, I think
First
Ronnie's
off,
sign is
well
blue,
done.
which makes it stand out.
Yes.
But, I mean, one thing I did grasp, kind of, despite really being mostly just completely unsure of what was happening over the course of the game, like genuinely, was like, okay, this is a world that the gods have kind of just left, and it's just created chaos. And like that was enough for me that's all I really needed to kind of be engaged and interested in what was happening without really getting into the family dynamics of it all. I've sort of started digging into that after the fact now, which has been fun and been interesting to see.
We're all waiting for the Vati stuff where he's like, many years ago, America and her spawn, like that stuff. I have it all.
There's the extra strange wrinkle of like the patch that came out 2 days ago, like added character quest lines. Like there were like fully new NPCs in the game that were not in the game previously, which could add whole new dimensions. I was also thinking, as we're all on this, that we should all get a badge that we're like beat unpatched Radon. Like we all kind of get to have that honor, but also got the like unpatched mimic tier that could just tank bosses single-handedly and do all that.
One-shot intelligence build. I ran up to Radon and dropped a comment on his head, and that was it. Right? Like,
oh man, yeah, it's so much easier than me.
so hard. I was like, well, I just like blew him up. It was great.
Oh, it was funny. I learned very late. Maybe this was obvious, but like I hit a point, around Radon where I was like, I'm calling people in. I need help with this. I can't do this on my own. And ultimately, the way I beat Radon was like getting a lot of help from just a random person. So whoever you were, I really appreciate it. But it wasn't until much later that I figured out that like when you do that, you call in people, it does make the bosses harder. It increases their HP amount. And so like often I had the maxed out Mimic tier, which is just like a godsend, like for me, the way I play. I had to have that thing. And I didn't realize that like a lot of the time, basically going in with that is you're going to have a better time than if you call somebody in. So I like use so many unfurled fingers by like the end boss's door and like was just having no luck. And then I just did a couple of runs with the Mimic tier and I'm like, why am I doing so much better? And that's eventually like how I beat it. And it was like on the final boss that I figured that out.
It's it scales your damage. It gives them more health. It kind of depends on the type of experience you want. For me, I found Elden Ring so large that I almost treated it like an MMO, where I felt more comfortable summoning in this game than I've probably felt summoning in any Souls game, right? Because people always go, well, you shouldn't summon in a Souls game. You're not playing it correctly. If you do, games journalists, blah, 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 blah. So, and usually I play them kind of by myself. I kind of prefer to do that, but this game is so big that sometimes there's just like dungeons you find and you can summon people and you're like, well, I'll do a dungeon with some random buds. Oh, there's a big boss ahead. Let's bring in just hit the homie button and like, let's go. Right. Like 100%. Yeah. So, but it really depends on the boss and the circumstance, but yeah, it does. Yeah,
I mean,
main bosses, it does scale up,
and I do think there's just so much content in this that even if you have a kind of like, wizard come in and like hyper beam someone, that doesn't mean like, in a Souls game that has like, I don't know, 20 bosses, then you might be like, oh, I missed out on fighting a really good one. But this game has like 100 bosses. And so like,
something.
Yeah, having someone, come in and really help you with one boss doesn't really affect your experience in the same way. And also, the game is, I mean, like, I kind of wish that there were more opportunities where you could just bring your spirits into the world, because, like, I was so lonely a lot of the time that I really liked just having, like, my ghosts hanging around and feeling like I had more people with me. Yeah. And so summoning another player just so you weren't kind of going in these like really dark dungeons alone, there was a sense of companionship that I really valued.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played in the beta, which let you play a little past Margit, the Fell Omen. And I had, at that point, I didn't know about the summons or how they worked or anything like that. So I really beat my head against an early version of Margit and did beat them, but I didn't use summons. And like it was after the fact, Dan Tack over at Game Informer was like, you didn't use summons? What's wrong with you? And then so then when I had the final release, I was like, and I had the wolves and I had the the jellyfish that it made Margit like a lot.
Just anything to hold his attention while you're smacking his butt with a sword or whatever.
It was funny because everyone understandably gets hung up on them early, hung up on Margit because it's like the first hard boss. But for me, I had already spent all that time in the beta, so I was like, oh no, I was good. I got right past that.
There are another thing that I'm looking forward to when like wikis are just kind of fully data scanning the game is like there are so many different summons, and like at some point I had like 24 of them and was like, I don't know which ones of these are good, like I enjoyed just picking ones that looked cool and like it worked for me. Like it was not something that I felt like I had made mistakes for, but like I am looking forward to the kind of data mined, like, oh, if you get the jellyfish up to +10, it has like 14,000 HP and nothing will ever kill it, or like, stuff like that you really don't have a way of knowing because the descriptions of them are just like +7. And who knows what +7 means.
It's definitely a game where if you talk to another person, they have a bunch of stuff you don't. and you probably have a bunch of stuff they don't. Everybody has a couple things, right? Like if you're a Dex person, you probably have Moonveil or something, right? But or if you're really going into intelligence, maybe you really did go and run and grab that one staff out in Caelid that has the S scaling. Like everybody, there's some things that are starting to become common knowledge, but when it comes to summons and a bunch of other stuff, it's like, not as many people have the same things. Most people, I think we all figured out Mimic Tier was pretty gnarly, but that's...
Well, that was, my experience was like, I don't remember what I was looking up something minor. I was like, how do I get this thing? And they were like, by the way, it's down here where you get the Mimic Tier, which is far and away the most powerful in the game. Like it's not even close. And I was like reading that. I was like, oh, do I have that? And I went and found out that I had it. And then I used it and I like realized what it was doing. Like I didn't fully understand the ramifications of it until I had read that online and then tried it. And then I was like, oh, and like threw all my inventory at it to like get it leveled up as quickly as possible and had it maxed out by the end of the game.
Sorry. Okay, I was going to ask very quickly if we could talk about our play styles very briefly to talk about sort of how we went about the game. I've made it very clear that I was magic and summoning comets, and I had katanas that scaled with intelligence. This is a thing I've loved doing ever since Demon Souls, right? It's weapons that scale with intelligence and big magic, but some of you might have used a big sword or something, and I'd love to hear about it.
So my first playthrough through any of these games is generally just a strength build, because it's like I might miss out on like a vital spell or whatever, but like if I can just find a big sword and like hold that up, like it's gonna do okay, like it's gonna be fine. And so I ended up using my final build. I was using for a while that sword that looks like the Game of Thrones throne that you get from like the guy in the castle all the way to the south, and it's just like a million swords wielded together.
The sword.
The sword. But eventually I switched to essentially a Bloodborne weapon, which was in the on the second story of the lava castle place. There's like a red phantom that comes up, and he has this weapon that in Bloodborne was referred to as the pizza cutter. That's essentially just a buzzsaw on a long stick. And it's a big strength weapon, but you can hold it down and the wheel continues spinning and it keeps doing damage, and it does bleed damage. And so then once I had the mimic, when we were both hitting things, it would like build up a bleed so fast on stuff that we were really just kind of tearing through. And so that was me.
I'm pretty boring and I don't play very experimentally at all. I don't even remember which class I picked, but they have the curved swords, the dual curved swords, because I just don't like blocking. I don't like it. I don't like it in any game. I don't want to block. And I basically never changed that weapon through the course of the whole game. Just kept throwing all my runes in strength and dexterity, just getting that number as high as I could, and I got both of those maxed out. And it led to a lot of frustration with and I apologize, Harper, because I don't think you've fought this boss yet, but
go for it.
The God-devouring serpent.
Yes.
When you meet that boss, basically it's a big like mangle of snakes with like flames below them, so you cannot get close. Like it's just designed to like you don't get close to it.
There's a catch to that boss fight.
Yeah, though. No, but Kyle,
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like I was like, well, my build is screwed here. I don't want to. I'm very lazy. I don't want to try different weapons. I haven't ever tried a different weapon. I just like my weapons, and I called in people assuming I would just have to stand back and like I guess I just have to let someone beat this for me. And everyone who came in had this ability with this sword where they were doing these big long range huge attacks, and I was like, well, that's a cool sword. I should try to find that. And then I realized it was in my inventory because it's given to you in a cutscene like leading into the fight. So like it took me way too long to realize. I was like, oh, if I had just moved like 1 inch outside of my comfort zone, I would have been fine. And I went and leveled that thing up, and it made the boss fight pretty breezy because you can just stand back and whack away at it with like, I don't know, what would you call it, like a lightsaber or something?
Kyle?
No, not really. Like,
okay,
no,
so
I played the remake for like 2 or 3 hours.
they've done this in subsequent Souls games as well,
Dark
but
Souls
like
3
one of
is a
the
big
most one of the most memorable
I beat Dark Souls
bosses.
3, but I don't even remember this.
maybe you fought a boss in a very hard way.
Probably, it wouldn't put it past me.
There's this sword called Stormbringer that they give you, and they give you it in a boss arena, and within that boss arena, it does kind of the same thing as the Blood Serpent Spear, where it's just these like massive like.
Yeah.
And I remember
Which very
getting
disappointing to realize that it did not function the same.
Yeah, so
outside
that's what
of Blood
I got that in Demon Souls, and I was like, well, clearly this is the best sword in the game, and like leveled it up a ton, and then realized that it only had that power in that arena and nowhere else. But like,
do you remember Yorm the Giant from Dark Souls 3 at all? If you were lucky enough, you got to fight him with the Onion Knight guy. That also has the same sword in that arena, and what the game, quote unquote, expects you to do is to use that sword in that fight too. So From's been kind of refining this style of boss fight for a while, ever since, like Jacob says, Demon Souls. This is not us from shame.
Oh no, I don't take it that way at all. Plus, it's my own issue of just not wanting to be experimental with weapons. But I'm looking this guy up now, and I'm pretty sure I just whacked him a bunch on the ankles with whatever I had. I'm looking at some footage.
Because usually Kyle Hilliard, and you swing it down, and there's a big shockwave, and so they've been trying variations on this theme for.
Yeah, but it does. I mean, it speaks to even the kind of most obviously that they will ever indicate something is just there is an item in a certain place and there's an animation when you pick it up. But it does not, it certainly doesn't auto equip it for you. It doesn't highlight it. It doesn't say in this arena it has special powers. Like, you still have to kind of do all that work, and you have to do it while you are in a boss arena, like changing weapons while kind of assuming like I'm about to get body slammed by this thing. And so like even, their highest like flashing neon sign is still relatively subtle in the grand scheme of things.
Thing in a cutscene, yeah.
If this was Zelda, it would be right above your head.
Yeah, you would hold up that sword.
You could fight big monsters. Like, it would be
not Navi would have been like, so do you want to try that thing that you picked up after your fifth death?
Get out of here.
So what were y'all's like? I feel like it was fun in like the first 2 days. Everyone had the moment where they went into the like underground river, and you would see people tweeting almost every like 15 minutes, like, have you been down into this river? Like, it's crazy. But the
implication is much larger than it ultimately ends up being, I think. Because my first reaction was like,
but
oh my
but
gosh.
Still, yeah.
Oh, it's very cool, but it wasn't like, Link to the Past, Dark World, which is what I thought I was getting into.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm curious about is like, as aside from that, kind of as you went further in the game, what were your other like, I did not expect this game to do this. Like, it's kind of broken the rules of its own world, because it did that a couple times for me, and every time I was really jazzed.
I have an answer with a really bad point of comparison, which is it made me feel like I was playing ukulele.
Interesting.
Because you get to the capital and you're like, you fight Margit again, except he reveals himself to be Morgott, the other. There's either two of them or he's the same guy. They could be brothers. I don't know. There's lore stuff there. And you're at the foot of the Erd Tree, and you're there with Melina, who is I'm going to go on record here, my least favorite Souls level up lady. She's not as interesting as other folks. Sorry. But you get there and you're like, oh, this has been a very large game. There are probably a lot of optional areas, but here I am at the door to the big tree. And then they're like, there's a bunch of thorns you can't get through. You have to go to the mountains to get fire from a giant. Sorry, see you later. Which
peace.
It's like there's not even an animation. It's just a dialogue box that's like there are thorns you can't get through.
And the reason I say it reminds me of ukulele is I have a distinct memory of reviewing that game as a journalist, where you get like 100 widgets to open the door to what you think is the final boss, and they're like, actually you need 200, and you're like, what the living hell, how much more of this is there? And the moment for like the idea of them just being like, actually what we're going to do is we're going to have you go to a mountain far, far away, which will probably have like a bunch of other stuff. That was gnarly to me. That really surprised me, because if this was Dark Souls 1, that would have been, you know, the kiln of the first flame, and we would have been parrying Gwyn to death by then. Instead, they were like, here, go do more.
I fully expected that the capital was the last area, and so I was kind of treating the rest of the map as like, all right, gonna clear all this out, and like there are some symbols that are in places that I don't know how to get to, but like, you know, whatever, I'll figure those out on the second playthrough. I'm going into the capital and I like think I'm done, and then there were like 4 more times when I was like, well, this must be the last area, because you have the snowy place with the big kind of kiln. And then you can take like the secret elevator and go down, and then there's a different snowy area, and then there's the Halig tree, and then there's like another giant city after the Halig tree. And every time I was like, this wasn't the final area? Like, there just kept being more game.
I mean, is his name the Fire Giant or the Flame Giant? I wrote him
probably
down.
I think Fire Giant.
Yeah, I liked him.
You liked him. One of my least favorite bosses by far.
It's an interesting one where I beat him relatively easily, but then I was talking to people that I don't know if it's a build difference or I just got lucky, but people were like, this is the most BS boss. Like he just kind of continuously one-shotted me. So yeah, people had bad times with him.
I just thought he was boring.
But really, guy who tears off his own leg? I thought that was cool.
I respect the hustle. Like, that's not the problem. Like, good for you, bro. But like, I thought that was like way more interesting.
I mean, he has a face on his chest. I don't know if you noticed that. I thought that was kind of cool too.
Yeah.
But I mean, I will admit, I was kind of hitting a point of exhaustion at that point where I was like riding around on torrent, and I was just like. It's like, oh my God, how much more do we have here? You know, which is like both a good thing and a bad thing in terms of like, you know, a piece of entertainment where it's like, I'm really loving this. But I do admit that at that point, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm making it all the way here. But then I got past the giant and I tried a bunch to jump down into the kiln. I like was so confused. I was like, what am I supposed to do here? And I was like walking around with torrent and like trying to find points where I could slide down there. And it was one of those things that just always kind of will forever irk me about From games, where it was ultimately, I just looked it up and it was like, oh no, you got to talk to your friend. I was like, I haven't talked to her in like 60 hours. Why would I just suddenly talk to her now? But yeah.
The game does have the good sense after you've done most of that to be like, okay, mostly you're just going to fight like 6 bosses in a row, which I think is totally fine. They're like, here's, one of them is Sir Gideon Ofnir. Good for you, bud. You tried your best. But then they're like, here's Godfrey, and here is like his mortal form, and then here is the, now it's Radagon, and now it's the Elden Beast, and everything. It's like, we've gone through so much that at the end of the game, it's like, usually if somebody was tossing a bunch of that stuff to me without a lot of connective tissue, I'd be like, well, clearly some things in the game got cut. But in this case, I thought, it was very much like, oh, they just really want you to go for it, which was kind of nice. It was a good change of pace towards the end, I thought.
Fair Missoula was enormous and a maze, and I did eventually
Is that the one that's off to the side?
That's the crumbling one.
Yeah.
Okay. Which, Jacob, is something that you've even talked about maybe trying to like do an essay on, is just like destructed buildings floating in the sky as like a video game. You got to have that in your video game.
That's the thing. But it's like, they demonstrated so many other kinds of landscapes that I was like, this doesn't feel like a trope here. It feels cool.
I don't mind it. I love it. I mean, honestly, it's never something that I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. I'm always like, this is cool.
Yeah. It's my favorite Super Mario Odyssey level.
That place had, I mean, it was huge. Like, it was way bigger than I thought it was going to be when I first got there. Other than Millennia, it had the hardest boss in the game for me, which was the Godskin Duo, that I've talked to other people who did not have a hard time with, but I was truly just eating dirt over and over and over fighting those guys. That was like that was my far more than any of the kind of final bosses. That was my like I need to just get good, and I ended up like parrying the big one over and over because that was the one way I could figure out how to do it.
Well, you know what it is too is it combines two things, which is the dual boss, which is Ornstein and Smo, right? Obviously, we have to have those, but then it also does the same thing, sort of, that Throne Watcher and Throne Defender do in Dark Souls 2, which is that they can like heal and revive each other too. So that's, I mean,
when I thought I had killed one of them and then they came back, I was hollering. I was
it's bananas.
Maybe you guys tried this too, where I was like, okay, well, what I need to do is kind of like lower them down at the same time and get them both at 0 health so they can't bring the other one back, right? So like instead of just focusing on one and then focusing on the other, I split my attention, got them both down to like 1 hit, and boom, boom, killed them both. And then they just revive anyway. Yeah. It's not that they're reviving each other, they just revive. And I was like, okay, well, all right.
And that was before I had the Mimic tier, and so I think having a summon with like more health definitely would have helped. But it was like I wasn't mad at them in the same way that I was at Millennia, who I still really feel like needs some kind of tuning adjustments.
This is also optional, right?
Yeah, but
it's like, well, her thing is it's such a slap in the face once you see it for the first time. When she hits you and she gets health back, you go, oh my God, are you kidding me? It's like, if it was her by herself, like, I mean, she's still a great boss. I had a great time with her, but like, if it was just her by herself, a lot of people would probably be like, hell yeah, like Maria and the Clock Tower hours. This is great. Like, I love this. But then she starts getting health back, and they've never really done it quite like that. And
that really wasn't the problem for me, because I was out damaging her. It was just that anime 1 million slash thing where she like goes up in the sky, and I've seen people, it's like, oh, you can just get a great shield and block the first one and then roll through the second one, but it's like I could not ever figure out a consistent way of avoiding that. And so it was just like I ultimately did it by having 2 summons, and just we all drew aggro at different times, and it was still ultimately a great fight with 3 people, but like I don't know, that one was on the wrong side of hard for me, and I love Orphan of Kos and stuff, so I don't know, different kinds of challenge.
I did it with buds too. I had people from my Twitch chat who were like, let's hop and do it. It almost felt like a raid boss, right? Like, who's holding aggro? Who's holding aggro? Who has bleed? Who did somebody bring frostbite as well? It kind of became like one of those types of things,
and I like
unique.
I liked, like, once I started treating it like that. But also there's the thing of like, when you're summoning, there's every summon sign that you see on the ground has already been used by someone, and so you're just constantly getting the like unable to summon phantom or whatever. And so it's like, once things chill out a bit and it gets a little easier, I think that it'll be a little more palatable.
So I'm surprised you guys aren't, because I got really hung up on, was it the Beast Clergyman Malekith, the Black Blade, which is like,
keeps the death rune.
Yeah,
that's the guy.
That was the one. That was like Radon and him ended up kind of being my biggest difficulty spikes, which I haven't heard a lot of people complaining about Malekith, but for whatever reason, I just had a lot of trouble with that one, and that one took me a long time. I was doing a lot of that thing that you're talking about, Jacob, where you're trying to get summons. Like I tweeted this, I'm repeating my own joke, but it's like playing whack-a-mole in front of these like areas where you're just like, all right, oh, cannot summon, let me try again. Oh, okay, cannot summon, let me try again. And it's like, I had never been able to bring in 2 random people, and what it took for me to beat Malekith was it just happened to work where I brought in 2 people, so the attention was divided among 3, and we were able to do it.
My hardest boss was, and it was a very random one. This happens all the time, right? Like, for me in Souls games, they don't tend to be major ones. They tend to be like very surprising ones. So for me, it was in Caria Manor. It was Royal Knight Loretta, who is just a ghost lady on a horse with a lot of magic. And then later on the way to Millennia, you actually fight the real her. but by that point, it felt a little easier. But the
yeah,
first
I mean,
time I got
and
to
you being
fight,
like a
beat me up.
magic build, it seems like, you know, it's like she's fast and probably very magic resistant.
If I want to summon a big comet, I have to stand there for a minute and do a whole big Gandalf
Yeah.
"you shall not pass" routine, and she's running around on a horse. That was a little tricky. That was like
that one was tough. I remember that one. Yeah, but yeah, similarly, I got to her the second time and it was like nothing.
Yeah, that's a good feeling though. That's a great feeling.
Yeah. The other one that I had a lot of trouble with, which is I found out after like today, I found out was optional, is the Draconic Tree Sentinel, I think it's called, which is like the person, the person on the horse that you see like right when you start the game. It's like the next level of that, sort of guarding the gate.
I think
the city.
Are they optional? Because they were standing in front of a fog gate essentially. It went down when you killed them. Yeah, they were tough.
Elden Ring wiki says it's optional, but like maybe there's an alternate route that I didn't know about. But I've
been watching speedruns. There are like 3 required bosses in this game.
Right.
You don't need to fight anyone.
But I was trying to get Radon and that Tree Sentinel, and I was like kind of just like going back and forth because I didn't really have a lot of new areas to explore at that point. So it was just like a couple days, honestly. It was like 3 days or something where I was like just bouncing back and forth between those two, trying to finish them.
I was just looking this up because you mentioned Draconic Tree Sentinel, and I was wondering, why does that ring out in my memory so much? And it's because I saw a place to summon, and so I summoned someone, and they did the thing where there's a flask, there's a combination of things you can do for your flask of wondrous physic or whatever it's called, where one of them is that it eliminates your FP spending for a certain amount of time. And so you can also mix that with a couple things. Among them is another half of the mixture that will increase your magic damage. And then there's also I think the spell is called Azure Comet or something. It's the big Kamehameha beam.
It's the death beam one.
Yeah. Used a lot. When I call people in, that's what they use.
I called in a summon just for, like I said, because I've been doing it because I've been like, hey, cool, I can hit the blood button. Let's go for it.
Right. Yeah.
And they ran up to the Tree Sentinel and they just used that spell once. And they
you posted a video of that on Twitter, and it looked like it was like someone being hit with the Death Star. It was like his health went down in like 10 seconds.
They are in front of some sort of fog gate, but I guess the idea of it being optional is that you probably could run past them and maybe pass into the gate.
Or there's just another entrance.
Yeah, that could be it too. Yeah. Who knows? You're right. The game's big.
I made a little video about it because I had the footage, but my sort of similar experience to that was Mog, Lord of Blood, which is a totally optional boss, where I called someone in, and what they did is they jumped off to the side, they
went into the arena.
Yeah, they got on top of a gravestone and went off to the side, and I was trying to follow them because I didn't know what was happening. So I'm just sitting there failing at this awkward jump that they figured out, and then all of a sudden, boom, just on screen, it was like, Mog, Lord of Blood, felled, here's a bunch of stuff. And I just turned around and walked into the gate, and the guy was like, here you go.
I'm astounded at the patch that just happened. It doesn't seem to have patched that, because what they're doing is they're hopping up to the side of the arena where there is literally a way to drop in to the boss arena. And when you do that, it doesn't properly trigger his AI. He stands there. He can't move.
Right.
This is a thing that speedrunners have done in different games before. I've done it myself because when you write about speedrunning, which I used to do, sometimes you try and emulate it a bit to understand what's going on. There was another case of this where in an earlier version of Bloodborne, for people in the audience or any of you who might remember the Shadows of Yharnam fight, the 3 ring wraith type dudes, there was a way to jump out of bounds, fall downwards into their arena, quit the game, hop back into the game, and because you never technically entered their arena correctly, they had no AI. So you could just stand there and hit them, and they would do nothing. And Mog functions the same way. There must be some sort of script that it is, so that when you use the fog gate, that's the trigger that actually tells them to start doing stuff.
Because sometimes from patches stuff like that out, But sometimes they just don't, and you kind of view it as almost like them offering an olive branch of like the what's its name, the one in Dark Souls with the tiny arena with the dogs. The Capra Demon, maybe.
Capra Demon, yes.
Where it's like
you can throw dung pies.
You can just throw fire bombs or dung pies like over the gate into the arena, and you've been able to do that for 12 years, and they've like remade the game, and like they're not patching it out, and at this point, you know, you kind of have to say, well, they know that's there, and they're okay with it. And so I kind of view when they don't patch something like this out, they're like, well, that boss, like, it's kind of got some BS attacks. Like, if you really don't want to fight it, like, you don't have to.
We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see, you know, because I've seen it both ways right now that, you know,
because they did patch that one with Bloodborne.
But I mean, like, even like in the stuff that I've been involved with for Psychonauts 2, there were times where like we left pathways where we knew a person could jump over, and we left that. And then other times we were like, well, we can't let them go here. And the one with Mog, that seems particularly egregious because there's ways to get to that peninsula super early, and then you kill him and you have 50,000 souls plus access to another area with a bunch of like sleeping frog dudes that are very easy to farm. That's like the place people go now to power level. So,
although also at the beginning of the game, and they must have known about this, there's that thing where you can just go and smack the big dragon in the tail for like 5 minutes, and it just gives you 100,000 souls. And it's catch is so easy to get there.
The catch is that you got to go to Caelid, right? Which usually will mean accidentally going in the treasure chest that is
but you can also there's that little teleporter that takes you to the like beast chapel place where you give the guy the death roots, and then it's like a 30-second horse ride from him to that. It's like you have to dodge a wake dragon, but like it's easy enough that I am certain people like did it in QA testing, and they were just like, if you want to do that, that's fine. Like, we're not going to stop you.
I think the intended thing there is that each dragon that's around it, the miniature ones, contains a portion of the HP that's tied to the dragon, the big dragon. So if you kill all of those, you should kill the larger dragon. But I think also you can just hit the dragon.
You can just, I mean, especially it's like if you have a weapon with bleed, then it takes off big chunks of it. I do want to call out just
real quick, Jacob, before we move on from that too much, I just want to say you could also be giving them way too much credit, and they might just like, if they fix that, it breaks 20 other things, and it's like, you know what?
Like, this is true.
The dragon exploit has
totally just be like bug prevention. But anyway, please go
ahead. I do want to call out. I thought the last boss, and particularly the first phase of the last boss, I was just so struck by the design of and thought it was incredibly cool, in part because like the original teaser for Elden Ring just kind of had like essentially someone like smelting, like a blacksmith doing what I assumed was making the Elden Ring, even though now I know that's like not a thing. But to have this boss, which is just this real kind of unearthly walking sculpture that would then like grab you and like hit you with kind of a blacksmith's hammer or whatever, and like the things the arena was doing, I was so happy that like
I watched
you
him
got
do
to
that
the
to
end.
I felt really bad.
Yeah,
while he's doing that, you just got to step back and wait for it to.
There's complicated lore stuff to that boss too, because it's Radagon, but Radagon is also technically Marika, and I don't know how this works. They are both the same person, so lore-wise, Marika shatters the Elden Ring, and Radagon tries to reforge it. I don't know, and Radagon is Elden Lord after Godfrey is made the first Tarnished and kicked away. That he loses his purpose, and they're like, get out of here. That's where he becomes Horaloo, the dude who you fight him in the second phase. That's how the lore of that is. So I think you're right to say there's something really striking there, and I think a lot of the sort of ephemerality of that body form is also tied to the dual nature of that god being sort of both male and female, and this constructed form. I'm not even sure about how all of the lore of it shakes out.
Yeah.
There's a hidden thing in there where there's a hidden statue somewhere where if you use one specific spell, it reveals the truth. It says America is Radagon. Somebody in chat or in the comments will tell you. There's literally, I don't even know the name of the spell, but there's a hint that says like, you know, this isn't the name of the spell, but say like intellect will guide the way. And there's a spell called like grand intellect. This is all fake, right? What is it? Somebody's saying in chat, law of regression. There's like some sort of thing called, yeah. So you go in front of the statue and the statue changes from America to Radagon. And that's like one of the few times that they're like very explicit about it. And so you can find that information. So it's very weird. And I will say, just to end my rambling, both the final bosses are very cool.
Yeah, both that and the big Beast dinosaur. And also, I guess, I thought, once again, I was at the end of the game, and I wasn't. Like, fighting Horticulture before that, who feels like the most generic, like, it's like this is just the body model from Senator Armstrong from Metal Gear Rising, and they've like put him in there and gave him a dragon. And I was like, is this how this game is ending, with just this big muscular guy who like grabs you, and then to just immediately be proven like, no, it's going to be completely ethereal. You're going to be in this like arena that you can't understand the dimensions of, and you're going to fight like an incredible sculptor thing and then a big dinosaur. I was just like, I was over the moon with how cool those last fights were.
After Godfrey is expelled from the capital, he goes on something called, I believe, the Long March, where he founds a tribe as the First Tarnished and changes his name to Horticulture. So there's the lore on that one.
And you find his daughter, but apparently her quest line was broken because Nefeli Lu is like, you could summon, and I summoned for Godrick very early in the game, and then she goes back to the Round Table Hold, and you could like give her different items, but she would like never do anything with them, and so apparently that's been patched, and so now she'll have more to do.
Great, I'll just replay the game right now.
Yeah, another 80 hours.
Wow, my friends don't need me.
Did Elden Beast, I don't know how into Princess Mononoke you guys are, but did the Elden Beast remind you of the forest spirit from
sure.
Princess
Yeah, when it's in its goopy form.
Like, oh, one Miyazaki to another.
You want to know what it reminded me of? And there will probably be some people in chat or elsewhere or on YouTube later on that'll go, oh, of course. It looks like a version of Chaos from Sonic Adventure. It looks like Chaos. It looks like Chaos just got all the emeralds, and we gotta fight it in the middle of the dimension.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Like.
A little shiny goop boy.
Yeah, he's a big old goop guy, and that's because I am a Sega person. That's just how I was growing up. I was, Genesis, Dreamcast, and everything. I could reach over here and show you right now my Dreamcast controller with the same memory card I've had for years. I saw that and I was like, so yes, Kyle, I saw the Princess Mononoke kind of thing there, but I also went, man, this boy looks like Chaos. You're
100% right. I had not thought of that. I don't know that I ever would have, but I definitely agree for sure.
What a cool boss. What cool animations. Oh my gosh. I can't imagine getting to work on something like that.
I did ultimately really like it and found it less frustrating than some of the other sort of sticking points for me. Like
it didn't feel like it was
like Radon's like a funny design, but like I hit a point where I was like, this sucks and I don't want to look at this guy anymore. Do you know
the lore about his horse now?
Yeah. He just doesn't want to move, right? He just wants, right? Isn't that something like that?
Also the horse in the game files is named Leonard. And so that's just like, that's what people refer to the horse now as, is like Radon and his horse Leonard.
His good horse Leonard that he loved so much that he learned gravity magic because he was getting so big he didn't want to crush the horse. God bless him. God bless Radon.
Yeah. Although he also crosses that, it like, destroys the world on the other side of the map, which is a cool moment too, to come across that and just be like, where the meteor landed, I guess.
Landed? The fact that they put it, essentially, it was like I teleported back to like the first site of grace for some reason, and then you just kind of look over there and it's like the earth is shooting up from the ground, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, Radon is literally holding the stars in place, and that's one of the reasons why in Ronnie's questline you have to go and kill Radon.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that area, I actually thought you weren't supposed to even go down there because it just seemed so imposing that I thought it was like purely aesthetic. I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then I talked to some people and it was like, I got to meet a Blade down there or something. And then it was at that point that I was like, I started kind of making my way down. I was like, wow, there's a whole lot happening.
Blade, probably the most explicit and kind of well done version of a Guts character that they've had in this game, a very berserk, because it's just guts, and it's great. He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy, which is so good.
Every game they get more and more overt with their Guts references, like having all the like swords sticking out of the ground and stuff here.
A lot of good berserk stuff, especially in this game.
Yeah. Are there any highlights that we want to make sure we talk about? I feel like we kind of sprinted past Godrick, but I think Godrick is really crazy and interesting and cool.
I immediately after beating him, I was just like, this is a Metal Gear Rising fight with both kind of like, he talks so much. He talks much more than like most of the other bosses, and also the thing of like sticking his arm in a dragon and then just kind of spinning around and whatever. Like, he really did feel like kind of a boss from a much goofier game, and in a way I really liked.
Well, you mentioned it when we had our sort of first discussion on the MinMax show about, there is a boss that reminds me of Revengeance, and I immediately knew who you're talking about. It's like, oh, is it the guy who like grafts a dragon head onto his arm?
Yeah.
Is it also possibly because it's conjuring Mistral imagery in your mind too?
Yeah, all the arms, all
right, yeah. I like that after you beat him, there's just the guy who's just like stomping on him.
Just hates him. He hates that guy.
Apparently, he's another quest line that was patched in the new. In the patch is like there's more to do with him, but I like coming back. Let's go. Like coming back 60 hours later and he would still be there. Did you all find at the very bottom of that castle the giant face like in the ground?
Yes.
What is that?
I used to know the answer to this. Someone got so bloated. I forget. I don't know. I know the lore
to like the concept of grafting, but it's like if there are like several places where you have to like drop way down, and down there's like a boss that's one of those just like big Resident Evil monsters. But then there's just like it's just in the like stone, the kind of bedrock of the castle, just this gross sunken face, and it's very disturbing. Like I that was something that I got down there. I was like, I don't know what this is doing. I don't know if I have to interact with it. I don't like that it's here.
I'm pretty sure, and I think somebody in chat might have this right, is that so during the Night of Black Knives, one of the people who gets killed is,
which that all happens before the game, right?
Beforehand.
Like
Yeah. There's two things that happen. Well, many things happen. I forget the name of the god. It might be there. They all have God in their name, so it's hard to know. But he gets killed, and what happens is his soul is severed from his body, but his body keeps on living. So presumably that's him, because the inverse happens to Ronnie, where Ronnie kills her body, but her soul keeps on living. It might be God Win. So during that night, two different. Yeah. It's kind of tricky. And that's partially a plot from Ronnie to stop herself from being an Empyrean in general. But Godwin dying is also the thing that makes Marika shatter the Elden Ring to start with. That assassination presumably causes so much anguish and so much rage that she shatters the Elden Ring, and then a big war happens. So yeah, it's a bunch of people. It's like Godrick, Godring, Godford. It's like a ton of them.
I think I'm married to Ronnie. I think
it's great. It's great
in real life for me. I really liked a non-story thing, but something that it would do that I loved, kind of like them knowing how big the game was and being able to really play with it, were like there were those portals that you could find that would take you to a very small part of a much later game area. Yeah. Where like early in the game you can find one that takes you to crumbling Farum Azula, and you can find one that takes you to the capital, and just getting a little peek of like, I'm going to get to go here at some point, I thought was a really cool way of them just kind of continuously promising like, oh, there's even more. There's more coming.
But it was also nice that, like, weirdly, because the game can be so intimidating, that when you do find those warps, to kind of be like contained in one place to just get a peek somewhere else was like nice. Because I would go through, initially at least, I would go through those and I'd be like, oh my god, I don't know where I am. Where is it? Like, I got to explore. How am I even going to get home? And then it's like, oh, okay, this isn't too bad. This is just a tease, which I think was
kind of one of the reasons I like the Everjails, right? It's kind of nice to have a place where it's just like, this is where a mini boss is going to be. Come back when you want to. Go inside the Everjail, fight a guy, and have a good time. I kind of like that. I know that's different than what you're speaking of, but there are ways in which, for a game of this size, it still manages to partition itself and allow you to approach it in smaller chunks sometimes if you're kind of cautious.
Right. So another boss, I went about it a weird way, is I did the school. I forget what it's called. I thought I had completed the school. Like, I thought I did everything I could do there. You know, I fought the wolf in the cathedral and like all that stuff. And it wasn't until I was like fighting the end boss that I was like, let me check and make sure I have all the what are they called? When you unlock when you have to go up to the tower.
The great runes.
The great runes.
Like, make sure I have all the great runes. And like it was on that list was Renala. And I was like,
Queen of the Full Moon.
And I guess she doesn't really give you one of those per se. But like it was one of those things where I went back to the school and tracked her down, and I was way overpowered, and it was a very easy fight. But it was like it was a big fight, you know, with a trophy fight to it that I totally missed. That looks really cool. I really like that one.
That is Ronnie's mother.
Gotcha.
Renala is Ronnie's mother.
Yeah, that fight is. I love the creepy Souls fight. I love it's like a lot of the games have something with just kind of like a mass of easy to kill mobs that are like vaguely unsettling, and yeah, I really enjoyed that one.
I like any time the arena changes very drastically too, so when that goes into like nighttime arena mode, I'm like, oh, this is like, it had like, for me it was like, this is some real Rom the Vacuous Spider energy, right? Like that so that stuff's pretty good too.
Any other bosses or areas you guys want to highlight?
I mean, I can't believe we've gone this long and we haven't mentioned the loathsome Dung Eater, everyone's favorite character.
I didn't do his. He has a whole quest, right? He gives you.
He has a whole ending. He has a whole ending to the game.
Yeah.
So
I haven't done that.
I mean, so I didn't do. I got to the point where he was like, find me under the Capitol, let me kill you. I'm gonna plant my seed in you. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And so I went down to the Capitol and just kind of by chance, I managed to kill him on like the first try, where it's like I died to most NPCs before I killed them, but I didn't let him kill me. And so that's where his questline ended. But I assume if he kills you, then like something keeps happening.
He's still vibing at the round table for me. Almost everybody else is gone.
Have you
almost everybody else is gone, and he's still there. No, I mean, I've completed the game. I talked to him now, and I've talked to him now. I've made my choice. I did the Ronnie ending, so he's just sitting there like.
No, he has really messed up lore. Like he kind of he implants people with his seed, which then kind of like sprouts at them and does whatever. But it's like. He's a loathsome fellow. That opening cutscene was not lying, but I also do love that they're just like, here's a character named Dung Eater. He's one of the characters you're gonna meet.
Explicitly, the ending that you do for him perpetuates his curse for all eternity. So it makes everybody have that like seed curse or whatever, right? So you corrupt the Elden Ring such that it is just shit world. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Did I say that word? Yeah, so it's just not good. There are some endings where you do make alterations to the Elden Ring. There's like one where, like, what are they, the gold mask people or whatever, where you can, the idea is that you're going to make the ring even more perfect, which is like, come on, bro. So like there are a lot of like weird side quest lines or side characters, kind of like the Dung Eater, that lead to entirely different outcomes for this game. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next month we be with these new characters and their quest lines, or like even the next week or two, we hear about another ending being found or something.
Yeah. The Dung one in particular sounded like, the bad ending. I was like, I don't think I want that. I think I want to avoid that. So
yeah, I mean, there's like the frenzy ending where you just fully just burn the Erd tree like to the ground, and it in the end cutscene, it's like there's not an Erd tree anymore, and it's just a big rock shooting flame into the sky.
I mean, I set something on fire, like my the round table area is like on fire now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of gotta burn it to get through the thorns, and there are various ways of going about it, but there's some more burning options than others.
Did you notice the real round table as compared to the one that you...
Yeah, that was neat.
Yes, there's a real round table hall in the capital, as opposed to whatever place that you are in when you go to the round table hall.
Which is not in the real place when you go there? It's just like a copy?
It's probably some sort of metaphysical thing.
And they did exactly that trick in Dark Souls 3, actually, which is like you and in Bloodborne.
And Bloodborne, because you find the old Hunter's Workshop as well.
Yeah, and you find in Dark Souls 3, you find the whatever, like the Firelink Shrine. The place that you are, Firelink Shrine again. And it is, I mean, it's like I'm okay with them repeating it 3 times because it's such a cool trick to be nice like, trick. I've been here 100 times. But here it is in a place that I didn't expect it, and somehow it feels more like real. It's just such a cool like thing to do.
Yeah, I didn't miss. There's no grace there, right, in the round table area.
Yeah, there is. It's just not in the same place. It's kind of on like a lower floor. It's if you do
it, I would always just leave to go level up and stuff. I was like, I didn't know where it was.
Oh wait, you mean in the normal round table, like the one that you teleport to?
About?
Which the one that you normally go to, the one where everybody is.
The table. Like it has a big.
I know. I went on it. I swear that I went and stood on that table, and there was no option to touch.
I think you have to not be standing on the table. I think you have to be like, at kind of the level of the chairs.
It is. It is in fact the biggest feature of that space. Yeah.
I assume that's what it was because it's like, well, it certainly looks like it. I'm surprised it's not it. And I walked around that table a bunch.
People are mad at you for standing on the table. Doing some bad manners.
Tap dancing frog routine up on the top of the round table. Show a little respect.
Sorry, everybody. I'm sorry.
God.
Any other highlights before we wrap this up here?
I mean, it's just fun.
I finished it and I was like, so glad to be done with Elden Ring. And then I started playing another game for like 5 minutes and I was like, I'm going back for more Elden Ring. Like it really does. It has that thing where I just want to play it again and be better at it.
I'm surprised at how much I've gone back and started to enjoy the lore. Obviously I've been the person saying some fake historical facts every now and then here. As we've had our conversation, but it's
even though there was grace in the round table area. So
when I first was playing this game, I was like, I don't give a shit. Like straight up, I just didn't. I don't know. I'm in my 30s now. I don't want to check every item description. I just want to go fight some bosses. I wanted to do like 900 other things. I have personal projects. Like I said, I'm playing Stranger of Paradise now. I want to play a bunch of different games. Elden Ring is huge. The last thing I want to do is ponder on all of its shit. I don't want to think about it too much. But now looking back on it, I look at it and I go, well, that's interesting, which surprises me because the aesthetics and the setting of the game I don't enjoy. I don't enjoy high fantasy. I don't enjoy all this Götterdämmerung stuff. I really don't. I don't enjoy the operatic sort of nature of the gods in this. It's like some of my least favorite conceptualizations of God. It's like very Germanic, and it's very empirical, and I find that very boring. And yet going back and like learning the actual story, that I find interesting. So that's been a pleasant surprise for me, considering that by virtue of its presentation and its world, this is probably like my least favorite world to be in. But I think the story of it is still very fascinating.
Yeah, it's a world that does not like you, but I guess that's kind of From's sort of. That's their whole thing, right? Cool. Well, there, we covered 100% of the game. There's nothing else to uncover. We nailed it. I'm pretty proud of us. Mostly proud of Harper for doing all the research. But
yeah, if it was just Kyle and I on this, we would truly just be flailing about.
I'm butchering it.
The guy with the sword a bunch. I don't know.
I'm butchering it too. There's going to be people in YouTube comments who are like, "Why didn't she actually say this?" Or what? Like, I don't know, y'all. I
do just want to say this counts as my video for Elden Ring. This is what I'm making this podcast discussion.
You don't need to stop asking. Don't need to.
That's right.
Well, I'm glad we could do that for you, Jacob, I guess. I don't know. There you go. It counts. All right. Well, hey, guys, thanks so much for taking the time to chat about Elden Ring. I think I'm probably going to go play more tonight, even though I've been getting into Tunic and planning on picking Final Fantasy up today. I think I'm just going to boot up my PS5 and suddenly Elden Ring will be loaded and I'll be like, what happened? Oh, no. Cool. Well, yeah, thanks so much. Please, do you guys have any plugs? Harper, you got any plugs you want to get in there?
Hi. I work for a game studio that some people might know. We're called Double Fine. We've made it clear more games are coming eventually. That's all I can say. But if you haven't, you should try Psychonauts 2. That's a fun game. It got nominated for a lot of stuff, at the very least. Hopefully we'll do well at like the BAFTAs or something. You can also find me just in general on Twitter at transgamerthink, probably just rambling about nothing important. So there you go. If you want to go back and play a good classic RPG, you could play Skies of Arcadia. There's my pitch. I have to do it. I'm contractually obligated as the world's biggest fan to tell people to play this game at every opportunity I can. So there you go.
And you benefit financially from people purchasing and playing.
Sega gives me a cut every time, which you think would be a conflict of interest, seeing that I work for Microsoft, but
But not the GameCube, just the Dreamcast version.
Just the Dreamcast version.
What about you, Jacob?
You can search Jacob Geller on YouTube or on Twitter, and I will come up there and I talk about things that are video games. That's about it.
Check out Jacob's Returnal video. I'm a big fan of that one. I like that one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, thanks so much. There's more Elden Ring content on MinMax. You can find it. We've been talking about the MinMax show. We had a much less spoiler-filled discussion about the first couple hours that you can track down. That's really enjoyable. But thank you so much for listening to us. Be good. Have fun. Let's go.
Did you know that you can more than double the amount of podcasts from MinMax every single week by supporting us at the $5 tier on Patreon? You don't have to listen through the browser or anything dumb like that. You'll get access to a private RSS feed if you support us on Patreon. You put it in your favorite podcast app, and then bam, you can listen to our weekly bonus podcast Party Chat, the podcast versions of The Deepest Dives, MinMax interviews, Max spoilers, and you get the MinMax Show podcast a day earlier than everybody else. So please help support independent games media. Head over to patreon.com/MinMax with 2 N's.